what you're seeing is also, it's an interactive piece. So we're just setting it up still so that you can kind of see it in the midst.
Great.
Let's walk in.
Great.
So this piece, you know, the configuration was based mostly on trying to get this out in a space that was not Daniel's studio, but more of a clean space so we could kind of see what would happen. As we were thinking about the shape and the scale and all of this, Kim and I decided together we wanted light to be a component. We wanted to be about a nonlinear time. We wanted the narrative that we experienced together. When we went on these journeys, I photographed, she wrote. We didn't see each other's work. And afterwards, we kind of culled it down to maybe the top, whatever, 15, and then we got together and we kind of culled it down from that. So it wasn't necessarily that her poems were reacting to my images, but we were reacting to a shared experience. And so one doesn't define the other. So as we were going through, it's meant to be read, but also it's meant to be experienced in a more visceral way. So
and you all took these trips together.
We took these trips together, and they were grant funded. And we went to, when we were finishing the publishing of this, when we came up with the title for this, was toward the middle end of the journey. We went to Ucross and spent a couple of weeks there to kind of look at the order and see how we were going to put all of these together. We also had some designers at the beginning to figure out what images should be where, and then I worked with Greta with text and where it would be placed. So it's a lot more complicated in terms of how one might think about putting, you know, the text and the image together. So this is Venezuela, and the reason it's long like this is that sense of, it's called the falling edge. So this aspect, we were right on the border of Venezuela as it goes into the Amazon jungle. So this was in a place called El Pauí. It's kind of the journey to get there. And it was the trip in 2006. So a lot of the trips were about seduction and survival. We'd hear about places. I knew someone, a faculty member who lived there or was from there. Who taught here, and she took us down the coast of Venezuela with her brother in a Jeep and Kim, and we went right into this place beyond time, basically. And she was there as a media-based professor, and it was the first time they had television down there, and there were 3 different kinds of people that were down there, minors, indigenous people, and also disenfranchised artists, dancers, and whoever else didn't want to be in the world, the civil, you know, not civilized world, but just the world, kind of off the grid. It was really an interesting experience, and she wanted to see what would happen when TV was brought in, especially with the children, because, you know, to get to a place that hasn't had TV before and suddenly it's infused with that. So, and the same thing happened with Bhutan. When we got there, it was the first time they'd gotten cell phones the year before. So everyone, including the priests in the temples, were on their cell phones. So that was sort of interesting because you have this romanticized version of everything and then it changes. So this has a sliding, we played a lot with the spine, you know, and what's a book and what defines the movement of a book. So this is meant to be moved across, and you can take these pages out, put them someplace, and put more pages on top. So you define the order in which this is read. So that's how that's put together. And you can also move the spine around too. So I liked that idea of the spine and the way it connects. And you're welcome to try that if you want. I think I would be, it is plexi, don't have to tell you. So.
Okay.
Very careful.
You want me to interact with it?
Yes. Conceptually, yes.
Okay, so not physically?
No, physically I would try a couple of pages. But
You want me to try and move a page? You can tell me how.
There actually are pages here if you want to put pages on rather than taking them off.
Well, I think what I wanted to do was to separate out the text a little bit.
Okay.
So that I understood what I was reading better. Yeah, I love the physicality of this, and I I kind of like the fact that it's going darker. It makes me, as just a romanticist, feel like I'm going from day into night, and all that happens in the night, you know, being a Joycean type, all that happens during the night in addition to the day.
And then you have this kind of, you're seeing it, but it's part of the night. Yes, but it's part of the night. And actually that was at the base of a waterfall, so it's kind of like putting your hand up, feeling that.
Yeah, and this is very satisfying. This kind of way of
reading that where it's not through, but holding it up as a physical object.
Yeah.
So there's a material aspect to it. This is why it was so hard to tell you exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It's complicated, you know, and...
But also I think about the fact that it's so hard.
Look how nice it is to actually read it, but to read it on something that's that hard.
The layered texting is hard, so you will get it handled a lot. I hope that's okay.
Well, I don't know. You know, we'll see. In theory, I mean, I probably would have, my thing would be have the curator, gallerist, whoever it is, they're doing the handling. So it wouldn't be for whoever it is. It could be like, move this around, don't let me see it. But it's nice to be able to hold it. If it were more durable material, something would be lost and something would be gained.
Right.
You know?
But what I was thinking about is it's so hard to read a book anymore. The telephone screen is so compelling. And this sort of puts reading right in your face. Like, please read a book. I'm making you hold it, and it's...
Well, and this was in the transition with the ebooks, and was one of the reasons that it was about light and about this was the relationship of when would physical books start to disappear. And so this was kind of this interim reaction, you know, or this reaction to an interim time.
And Kim's publication was Mesocamin, is that right?
Yeah, Mesocamin.
Mesocamin.
Yeah.
Her writing is really beautiful.
It is really beautiful.
Yeah. I wish I'd known her better.
The portfolio that houses the 3 books is actually the crate container. That's going to, you know, be something that, and it resides in that suitcase of containers over there. So, you know, there's a lot of parts in terms of that. So this was about, and this can be in multiple configurations. I envisioned it initially about the square this is on a magnetic surface. So this is Iceland. So that the plates are separate. They could be leaned against each other. So these are kind of just tabs to either keep them in place while you're setting it up, to leave them in place. We were talking about this being a kind of spine of the book, has a removable spine or a movable spine as well. Greta, actually. Thank you, Greta. Greta came up with that idea. I love that, actually, because it kind of, you know, gets the spine into all 3 of these. What's interesting is these, although they're layered, you can read the poems much more easily. So it's not the stacking that's going on. And then...
But there's still this...
But you're walking around. If you come over
here's the interactive piece.
Yeah, and look at the way the imagery sort of...
Now we're on the positive side of that photograph as opposed to the emulsion side. Yeah.
So, and it also, as you go around, you know, what happens here. And I love this kind of jutting out where you're sort of seeing all the... This is the first time I've actually seen it together. Thank you. Because we were doing components for, I don't know, 6 years or something, you know, kind of putting it together.
And you're talking about Iceland being this unstable landscape.
This I imagined having another pedestal where some of these were stacked. Oh. So that could also be this house of cards idea where you're rearranging it each time you're doing it. Rather than this grid formation, it's more like, let me start to do the house of cards. Let me be the kind of director of this narrative, which is somebody else's, but now it's mine because I'm playing with it, you know, and where it is in space.
But you mentioned instability. So when I see these jutting edges, I think, okay, you know, like that.
Well, it feels
teeter
like,
off.
Yeah, and it
feels
also feels
unstable.
like ice, and it feels like ice cubes or glaciers, perhaps. You know, it has all of that sort of those components to it. I think also we were looking at paper, and I might be speaking for you, Daniel, but the idea of not damaging what's happening, you know, with the plexi.
Right.
Because we talked about it being clear, or do we want it plastic, or, you know, what should those look like? So, you know, this brings attention to the fact that it's clipped together. Some of that works for me. You know, I'm not sure if it didn't work for me, what else I would do. I like the idea that it stabilized all of it. If it went black, would you notice it more or less? You know, it's like, I don't know. I like the kind of white to white. And it also, if we're going to look at this as a spine, then this becomes a visible spine of the book. Just like as we turn to this, which is Bhutan, this actually becomes the spine of this book. So this book is also about, you know, and the shape of this came from these prayer wheels that I saw in Bhutan in a temple, where you're doing this, you're sort of spinning, because it's all about the, religious-wise, it's all about the turning, you know.
It's an endless.
Yes,
it's endless.
Right.
Yeah.
So it gives that sense, and we actually were putting these up, trying to decide height and everything. But again, that kind of stacking and restacking. So you have these pegs to kind of put those on.
And so the viewer might be invited to move one disc to hold another.
Exactly, to hold them up, to do exactly what you were doing on the other tray. So it becomes somewhat of a dance. It becomes somewhat of like a physical manifestation of reading. I'm holding a book. You know, is it a book? I don't know if it's a book. So if it's a book, you've ripped the pages out. So you're reconfiguring the alignment or the direction of what happens with this book. And so it's a kind of, you know, you're the creator of the piece, or I am. But I want to instigate another kind of creativity in someone that's looking at it. So it's not a static thing. So the journey continues, actually.
Yeah, this is fun.
Something that's kind of interesting about this, even though it all looks, this meticulous attention to detail took years. Thank you.
And how much time did you all spend in each of the locations?
12 days.
Each time?
We were thinking about 10, you know, and using that as our whatever, marker. But it didn't quite work out, just so we decided 12 was, you know, because you have to come in and kind of get your bearing, and then you have to leave. So that takes off the first and the last, and it kind of pares down to, I guess, 10, if you want to call it that.
Is this a temporary temple? What is that?
I don't know. I think it was.
And here's one with no words.
Yeah, just the imagery. I like the idea of this extended journey because it's a lovely story, you know. But I also think they could be separate components as well. And some of this was, you know, low-level cameras, and, you know, things were both clear and sort of like in this case, it was like, you know, slightly out of focus or taken on the fly or something, which I think is interesting.
So pants made from a corpse replica in the Witchcraft Museum.
Yeah, that was in the fjords, the northern fjords.
So there was a lot of witchcraft in Iceland?
Yes, there's a lot of narratives. You know, I'm thinking island places like Ireland, you know, there's a lot going on about spirits and, you know, things that exist under the earth, or because it's such a dramatic landscape, and I'm sure in days when you couldn't really define what was going on, I think a lot of that would come from sagas, you know, the rumbling and the unstable earth. So it's pretty interesting, that whole, I mean, Björg, you know, sort of sings about it in her own way. So has that kind of quality to it.
I think what's kind of great is that I left it in a different state than you all left it.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen with any viewer that's allowed to move them around, is that you, the curators or creators, you're going to come upon it and see something new.
So it's going to be fresh always.
For you.
For me.
For you. Well, thanks. What a privilege. Thank you very much.